First, Sky Sweep, year 264, third age. I do not know what time of day it is. This place is testing the limits of even my sanity. Time passing doesn't seem to feel the same here. Every step we take, I begin to question if this is all even real, or is this simply a nightmare? It's only wishful thinking. This is very real, and the far wood surely has its hold on us now. There is nowhere to go but deeper into the wood. We awoke this morning to a knock at the door of our temporary safe house. A woman was there, a local of sorts. It seemed the rumors of humans living in this place are true, at least to some extent. Apparently, the impaled corpse we found yesterday was also a local. Curiously, this woman also seemed to be made of bark and moss and could not speak. She carried with her a piece of charcoal and hide to talk to us. She offered to trade us a few things, claiming that as outsiders we would need anything we could find. Lament parted with a few of her more eccentric harvests from previous monsters, and we managed a few useful items. A ring that grants the wearer invisibility, and the most curious being a strange bunch of twigs and twine. The trader called it a witchwood ward, and said it would help protect us against hag magic. She also told us of a way into the deep woods, where we assume the gathering will be taking place. Hopefully we will also find Donna along the way, otherwise we will have gone into this cursed place for nothing. The trader instructed us to continue west, passing the Pig's Head to a large building she called the Asylum. There we would be able to access the tunnels. We would, in theory, be able to reach the deep wood through there. She also had a key she was willing to trade us, and so we set off west. We smelled the pig's head long before we saw it. A disgusting amalgamation of pigs' heads, rotted, bundled together, and suspended from the trees. I am not sure what purpose this is meant to serve, but I sincerely hope we never see it again. But, despite it being such a horrific discovery, we at least knew we were heading in the right direction. We arrived at the asylum around midday. It was this huge, imposing building, seemingly abandoned and in ruins, much like the rest of the structures we had found. Upon opening the doors, we found the word "Leave" scrawled across the floor in what looked like blood. Quite the inviting sight. I looked around what seemed to be a sort of reception desk. Most of the documents had long since rotted away, except for what looked like a ledger. I picked it up to leaf through it, but was alarmed to find our names written inside. The ink was not even dry, as if it was written seconds before I picked up the ledger. I tried to look at the previous entries, but they were all the same. The doctor will see you now. Over and over. On every single page. After our unsettling first impression, we quickly started looking for a way downstairs. Lament heard growling coming from behind a door and opened it to find several creatures. They looked like monstrous mouths that had just grown legs. They were easily dispatched, but we weren't silent about it. We kept finding more words written on the floor. Drink the sap and voices in the woods were written on the floor where we found the monsters. The word sleep was written in the kitchen. Even Aru began having some sort of hallucination. He kept seeing what he thought was a doctor, but far too tall, limbs too long. It was injecting people with a thick golden fluid, I assume the sap from the trees outside. We found a few patients as well, but none of them responded to us. They just sat there, staring at the walls and rocking side to side. I'm honestly not sure they were ever really there. Eventually, we did find a stairway leading down. We were greeted by our final message written on the floor. The word escape, along with an arrow stretched across the hallway. There were what looked like cell doors lining the walls, made of solid metal, with slots, I assumed, for providing food and water to the occupants. The arrow led to the end of the hall, to a large set of double doors. Dread began to fill my stomach as I stared at them. Something felt wrong, well, more wrong than before. I could not explain it. As we stood still, staring at the door, Nakai suddenly fell back. He swears he felt a hand grab him and drag him backwards, but nothing was there. Aru and Lament began investigating the cells, not finding much, save for some armor Aru could salvage. We had only gotten but halfway down the hall when we heard a noise behind us, back at the top of the stairs. Altharian, Lament, and Aru went to look, while Dash, Nakai, and myself stayed back. But once again, nothing was there. It was almost as if we were being toyed with, like a game of cat and mouse. There was one of the cell doors that caught my attention. It was closed, unlike the others. So, against my better judgment, I pressed my ear against the door to listen. It happened so fast, too fast for me to react, as the slot on the door flew open and a hand shot out, grabbing my neck. It quickly tried to pull me in, slamming me against the iron door. My head was ringing from the impact, and I was too stunned to do anything as it tried to pull me in again. Dash was next to me in seconds, pulling me away and severing the hand at the wrist with his saber. It dropped to the floor unceremoniously, and the arm retreated back, and we slammed the slot shut. The next thing I knew, I fell back onto the ground, coughing and holding my throat. We waited for something else to happen. Nothing more came from the door. No sounds. No cries of pain. Whatever was inside probably couldn't begin to compare with what was awaiting us beyond the doors at the end of the hall. Once we'd reconvened, we unlocked them with the key the trader gave us. It found a sight from the hells themselves. Bloody surgical instruments hung from the walls, disfigured creatures sat in cages, and in the middle was an operating table. Laying on it was the headless torso of what I assume was once a humanoid of some kind. Standing above it was what I can only describe as a sort of twisted surgeon. It was tall, pale, with 4 spindling arms and a hunched back. It was dressed in a bloody apron and bandages, and wore what looked like humanoid bones like jewelry. It held a dismembered arm in one hand and a saw in the other, and its voice, shrill and painful, was filled with a sick sort of glee, seeing as it had 6 new patients to work on. Lament ran in first, then Aru, and then Artharian. Before I knew what was happening, I was pierced in the abdomen with something sharp and dragged into the room as well, towards one of the cages. We later found out these were what Lament saw come into the house last night. These misshapen monstrosities dragged both Dash and myself into the room, and the surgeon called down what I can only describe as a hideous mass of eyes. Fighting is always a blur of adrenaline, but this one will never leave me. I remember staring into the face of this monster, burning it with arcane fire. Then everything was dark. The mess of eyes enveloped me, and I felt my eyes straining against the sockets, and realized it was trying to add my eyes to its collection. I tried to scream, but found my body paralyzed. All I could do was struggle, helplessly, as it tried to rip away my eyes. Aru's aura began to fill the room. I could only hear the sound of flesh being burned by Mistress Fury and cut by Artharian's blades. Then I heard the popping and the sound of liquid hitting the floor. I felt something warm began to run down my back before the entire mass of eyes exploded, drenching both Dash and myself in this disgusting fluid. There is not enough hot water, soap, or magic in this world that would ever make me forget the feeling of being bathed in the fluids of 1,000 eyes bursting at once. Just writing this is making my stomach turn. Lament killed the monster masking as a surgeon, and the abominations in the cages were easily dispatched once the worst of it was over. The room fell silent, and we found yet another door, this time with a magical lock. Dash opened it rather easily and swung the door open, revealing a large storeroom and a dirt tunnel dug into the wall. It was barely 5 feet high and stretched into an endless dark that even my eyes couldn't penetrate. However, we did not have time to worry about what might be waiting inside. I heard it at the end of the hallway, papers rustling, and suddenly hundreds of sheets of parchment began rushing down the hallway and into the surgeon's room. They all said the same thing. The doctor will see you now. The doctor will see you now. The doctor will see you now. Over and over again. I was the first to see it. A tall, robed figure, with arms far too many and far too long. I could see no face, just a tangle of fabric and arms that moved unbelievably fast towards us. We were in no condition to fight it now. We'd used too many resources dealing with the surgeon and his experiments. Our only option was to slam the doors shut and run into the tunnels. I now write this in the dark, as we've stopped to catch our breath. My infernal gaze proving quite useful here. I decided to use the last of my arcane stores to try and scry on Dominic. I tried once before. I just needed to know if he was still alive, but I'm not sure anymore. I saw the same vision as the first time. Dominic sits there, expressionless, as Granny Nightshade serves him a slice of pie. These visions are an illusion, I'm sure of it. He is not responding to my sending messages either. In fact, it seems the woods have a way of distorting this kind of magic. My only hope now is that we make it in time. By all of the gods of this world, he has to survive. I need him to survive.